It's about hundreds of undocumented immigrants being arrested and picked up in a series of raids across the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, agents targeting homes and businesses in a half a dozen states this week alone, taking approximately 160 people into custody. More than 36 of them have already been deported to Mexico. The arrest sparking protests in Los Angeles and prompting Spanish-language media to run PSAs promoting Know Your Rights seminars. CNN politics reporter Tal Kopan is following this story and joining me live now from Washington. So, Tal, Trump administration officials are trying to stress that these raids are no different than what is done on a daily basis. Is that the case?
That's right, Frederica. And, so right now there's some things we do know and there's some things we don't know. So what we do know is that it's true that ICE did conduct enforcement actions, at least similar to this, under the Obama administration. What we don't know is whether these raids reflected the enforcement priorities of the Trump administration or are more in line with what we saw before. And so what do I mean by that? Basically, under the Obama administration, ICE would go out and they would target specific individuals in sweeps similar to this. We know that over the past 5 days, hundreds of people were taken into custody. There were the ones in LA that you mentioned. There were also some out of the Atlanta office, which affects some sort of parts of the Southeast. And there were also reports of some arrests in Texas as well. And so we know that these enforcement actions happened as they did under the Obama administration. The question is whether the priorities for who they targeted is consistent. And, Secretary of Homeland Security John Kelly, who has just been installed, did go out there and really tried to emphasize that these are not out of line with what the administration had done in the past.
All right, Tal Kopan, thank you so much from Washington. We're going to talk more about all of that and the differences on how these sweeps are being executed and targeted. I'm joined now by Javier Díaz de León. He is with the Mexican consulate here in Atlanta, and former Commissioner for U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, Gil Kurlikowski, and CNN political commentator Jeffrey Lord. All right, good to see all of you. All right, so Gil,
hello, Fred.
You served under the Obama administration. Is it the case that these raids are the same as what was conducted during the Obama administration?
Well, during my time, I was the Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection. ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is different and rested under Sarah Saldana than a former U.S. attorney. But I can tell you, both as a chief of police and having been in the administration, that these kinds of arrests, and if you prioritize people that have been convicted of felonies, have final orders of deportation, et cetera, those continued on. But I don't know if these are any different.
Okay, and so Javier, what has been your experience based on the phone calls that you have been getting? Does it seem very similar, the same kind of targeting of people who have convictions, or is it different?
Well, there's always a lot of nervousness and uncertainty in the community. I think in this case, we think that the sort of operations that have taken place are similar to what we have been seeing in the past few years. What is different in this case is probably the size and scope of these operations, the number of these operations that took place in a very short period of time. Okay,
well, even though President Trump had issued that warning shot that it would be top priority, was the expectation there that this is what the consequence would be? Well, we have had the expectation that maybe some changes will probably happen. And actually, the Mexican government issued a press statement very recently, a couple of days ago, saying that we are, approaching our community, telling them to get closer to the consulates, to call the toll-free numbers that we have in place for them, to make sure that they are close to reliable information and close to, legal assistance from us. Because we know and we think that maybe some of the ways these operations have been taking place now is probably going to change. And so, Jeffrey, an ICE official, told reporters that the vast majority of those arrested had criminal histories, not all. So why is it the case that all immigrants should not be concerned?
Well, I'm sure they should. I mean, look, if you're here in the country illegally, you should be concerned. No country in the world is going to let people just come over en masse. I mean, think of this in the reverse. If 11 million or 12 million American citizens suddenly decamped for Mexico and demanded citizenship and benefits and everything else, the Mexican government would be up in arms, understandably so. The United States is a country that is filled 100% with the descendants of immigrants. There is no one here. Even the Native Americans are really the first Americans coming from Asia. So no one is anti-immigrant. But there is a legal way to do it and an illegal way to do it, and that's been the problem.
So Gil, what are your concerns about the potential follow-through? If this is a stage one, what do you see on the horizon?
So you have to make sure that you're communicating with the local law enforcement agencies. When I was the police chief in Seattle, this was a significant issue with ICE. Both the ICE director in that area and myself would do community meetings. You know, no one wants a drug dealer, no one wants a convicted felon or a criminal in their neighborhood, regardless. And if the only way that that person can be taken out is through an immigration order, perhaps the police department is not going to make a case, a drug case or a gun case. But people want to see their neighborhood safe, and that you have to work closely with the local police department. You just have to try and help people understand, you know, these law enforcement agencies have finite resources. And so you're going to direct those finite resources against the people that are most problematic, that are causing the most trouble, that are the convicted felons and the drug dealers.
And so, Javier, how do you allay fears, if at all?
Well, we provide a lot of reach out into the community. We have a toll-free number that is national, that is 24 hours available to all Mexican nationals to get access to legal assistance. And of course, you know, make sure that they are have solid information. Of course, we're also very concerned and in terms of working with ICE, and we have a very strong relationship with them in order to get consular access, to be able to access those people who have been detained, to make sure that we can provide to them the assistance and the legal orientation that they have a right to according to American law.
And what is the, I mean, what's your understanding as to what people are subjected to if they are caught up in this sweep? Presumably, they don't have a chance to grab their cell phone or whatever papers or documentation, but what does happen as far as you know? I
mean, at some point, there is the expectation that they should be able to contact the Mexican consulate. They should be able to have access to due process. If they choose, they have the right to appear before a judge before being subjected to immigration
So there
measures.
are many days that may pass?
Of course, and they have a right to legal counsel. So all of those things need to be taken into account according to the due process that is contemplated in American law. And our job is to make sure that that happens.
And Jeffrey?
Fred, there's a story in the Wall Street Journal this morning that says that there are a number of Mexican officials who are considering deliberately jamming U.S. immigration courts with cases. The courts are already overburdened as it is. You know, so I do expect that a story like that is going to have President Trump's attention.
And Gil, final word?
Well, a couple things. One is that remember that our illegal migration flows over these last several years really haven't been from Mexico at all. They've been from these Northern Triangle, 3 Central American countries, and that goes back to 2012. I mean, there's even some information that people are leaving that are Mexicans that have returned back to Mexico. So we need to kind of keep that issue in perspective. 3 other countries causing the vast majority of the illegal migration.
All right, we'll leave it right there. Gil Kurlikowski, Javier Díaz de León, and Jeffrey Lord. Thanks to all of you gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Fred.
All right, happening right now, President Trump and Japanese